you guys what is up. It is I, the Concrete Catwalk. Those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. I love all things thrift, vintage, new, nearly new, estate sailing, you name it. I love it. To my catwalkers, mwah, welcome back to a new video this cold Sunday. Those of you who are new to the channel, thank you so much for coming along together on this journey. As you see from the title, I figured I would sit down and we would talk about fashion and as my ever-shifting views with how I see fashion and my relationship to it. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about my evolution with clothing or accessories or bags, and so that you guys get what my aesthetic is when I am deciding what I'm gonna go after to add into my wardrobe, and how that has changed significantly sitting where I am currently today versus several years ago when I was much younger. Growing up, my mother had a fascination with wanting to go thrifting, looking for things that were gently loved. Thrifting and all of those things have become a big awareness for a lot of people. Fashion has really taken the notice and nod from years gone by with regards to bringing back reproductions of things, clothing-wise, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know it. So for myself, growing up, I did start to tag along with my mom when she was going thrifting into all the secondhand stores, the New Village, all those different places. But it evolved into something different for me. I took a liking towards designer goods. Once I discovered that being able to find some of those designer pieces in secondhand stores, and not necessarily labeled like the designers we know today, but things that with being able to recognize, and especially as I got older over time, that good quality materials, things that were done by hand, things that you knew when you looked at them were of some type of a quality that made sense, the heaviness of the fabrics that were selected, patterns, and on and on. That is what got me into the nuance of fashion. What that looked like for me in my 20s was I was specifically targeting things that not only were they just designer pieces, but they were pieces that were coming in strong in the color department. And I think that when you're younger, you tend to look for things that are going to be the most showy, and oh, this is this and this is that, and neons and all of those things. But ultimately, I started to advance and get older and to have the ability to look for things that were much more in line with who I was evolving with as a person. My relationship with fashion started to change. When I got into my early 30s, I started looking at the type of a wardrobe that I had built to that point, and I noticed that the things that I had, some things were worth holding on to, and other things were not worth keeping. But I didn't really understand exactly what it was that I was curating at that point in time until a little bit more time had passed. And then I got into that mindset of, okay, well, let me just take a look at what's going on in my wardrobe and try and figure this out. It really got real within the past 10 years when I noticed that my selection of things had begun to get very, very, very targeted. And I'm going to break this down because I got to lay this down so that you can see what the parallel is. As I started looking into my wardrobe, I realized that I have an affinity for things that not only have a history to them, but are longevity pieces. Things, no matter what it is, clothing items, accessories, bags, that can stand the test of time, sustainability, if you will, and can move themselves seamlessly and flawlessly through decades of use. Whether it was a prior owner that had the thing for 10, 15 years and it migrated to me and I decided that I wanted it, or if it's something that I came across thrifting or doing vintage or estate selling and decided, hey, this looks like something that was really special to somebody. It gives me that feeling that it was well loved, well used. That's the type of thing that I have an affinity for. I will bring this together collectively and say that has been a key decision maker in things that I decided that I was going to keep in my wardrobe and or things that I was going to let go. With looking at fashion real time today, I struggle with it. I'm not even going to hold you on it. I struggle with it because yes, there are certain styles that I notice, that I see, that I am drawn to, but as far as selecting things new off of the rack at a given department store or high-end department store is very difficult for me because I don't feel that pull. I don't feel that draw towards the fabrics and the pieces that I do, especially when, and I'm going to take it one step deeper, especially when I am looking for things that are going to draw me in. I have to have that feeling, and vintage is what is drawing me in that direction. Most people are looking towards vintage now. They want that originality, and I agree with it, and they want that feeling a lot of the times that vintage gives of one of a kind. And usually when you find pieces, when you're looking for vintage, it is exactly like that. But I have a different interpretation when it comes to vintage. I think vintage pieces, they find you, especially if you're the type of person who likes to wear it. I'm not speaking in terms of collectors, people who look for pieces because they're collecting. I'm not speaking in terms of people who are in this to do resale and they're looking for things because they know that that's where the audience attention is right now. It's thrifting things that have a vintage heritage or going specifically to estate sales to look for things that have that vintage pedigree and people know that they can move that stuff. That's a separate discussion altogether. When I put the focus on vintage, I'm thinking in terms of wanting this particular piece or this item to find me. I do recall that I was very interested in having a leopard print coat to add into my collection of coats that I wear, a rotation piece. And it had to be a vintage leopard coat. Why? Because a lot of the times, if you're lucky, vintage leopard coats are made out of the real deal. I'm not opposed to fur as long as it is vintage. I happen to find a vintage leopard coat, and that coat is still a part of an active wearable piece in my wardrobe, and I love it for that because we all know that leopard and those kind of prints don't ever go out of style. They'll go into a rotation. They may be at the front of the closet and then they end up at the back of the closet, but very rarely do they leave. I say this because when it comes to how I look for things that I want now, there are several things that have to go into it. If it's a vintage piece, yes, it has to speak to me, irregardless of the time frame that the piece is coming from, whether it's the 60s, the 70s, or 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s. It has to fit the bill of being able to be worn with other things mixed in with it so that it is not dating me. And when I say dated, meaning looking outdated, so that when you put it on, it makes you look outdated. It's a fine line, I think, with vintage pieces, at least for me. Let me just speak from in terms of me. It's a very fine line. Let me know in the comments below if you find that to be true when you target vintage pieces. Is it the same way or is it a little bit different? I think everybody has their own nuance about what they do when they come across vintage pieces that they like. For me, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the patterns, I'm looking at the color, I'm looking at the cut, I'm looking at fabric. The thing that I find with vintage is you do have to be careful, because vintage can teeter-totter in that direction where it could very easily look as modern as ever real time in 2025, or you could put it on real time today and look like, you know what I mean, it can be looking a mess, and we don't want the mess. The fashion that exists as we know it, what's in the stores, I don't feel that relationship with those things that are kind of new and off the rack. If it's something that's soft and easy to wear, like a jumper or a sweatshirt or a sweater, that's easy because it's sticking in line with things that are very simplistic and will weave themselves throughout a wardrobe, and it's very easy to do. But when it comes to fashion in terms of, can I get it and it's ready to go with some vintage piece that I want to mix it with, or can I work with this piece from now, real time 2025, and in 10 years from now, is it going to still have that same staying power or not? I have pieces in my wardrobe that are at least, some of these pieces, at least 60 to 70 years old, and when I pull them out to wear them, it is as if I literally just picked it up off of wherever it was hanging rack-wise and decided, okay, this is what I'm going to wear. And it has to be the staying power for me that makes it make sense. I am very picky and I'm very particular about the things that I decide that I want to add into my wardrobe. I didn't become that way until the last 10 to 15 years of really wanting things that made sense for the type of lifestyle that I have. I'll give you a perfect example, and that is this bag that is sitting over my shoulder. This bag has held the test of time, and I am thankful that it is still part of my wardrobe. And I'm gonna bring her forward. This is my Balenciaga giant work with all the large hardware. I purchased this bag pre-loved now 15 years ago. I think I paid about $1,700 for this bag pre-loved. If you look at the condition of this bag and you look at the staying power, these are beginning to pick up momentum again as far as popularity. I just love the fact that I can just pull this out and it looks just as good as it did when it was first introduced back in the day, minus a little bit of wear or tear. For fashion today, things that I look at and I see and I've thought about getting, I always question, are you gonna have that staying power 20 years from now? Am I gonna look as great with it 20 years from now as I do with it today? You do have to ask yourself those questions, and it always should be a push-pull, defining what it is that you like, what it is that you don't like, in order to build something so cohesive that no matter what you introduce, whether it's something vintage, something that is of current collections or pieces, that it all blends together to make you look flawless. There you have it. Let me know in the comments below if your feelings towards fashion have changed, and what are the things that have triggered those changes. What have you done with regards to and in your own respective wardrobe? Thank you so much for stopping by this week. If you do not want to miss out on anything that I post, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I post videos every Sunday, so if you do not want to miss out, you know what to do. Tap that and you'll receive notifications each time I post a new video. Links to my socials will be listed in the description box below. You can head on over to Poshmark. You can check out my closet. I am Concrete Catwalk on Poshmark. Feel free to leave me a message there if you see anything in my closet that you like, or you can head on over to Instagram. I'm the Catwalks Concrete on IG. Feel free to DM me there as well. You guys, thank you so much for stopping by this week. Be safe. See you all next Sunday.